Okay, hello everybody. Let's do a quick run through of dimensions, and essentially I'm going to be giving you two things. One is the video right here that you see, and the second thing is actually I'm going to give a link to this this blog link from Adobe right up here, which essentially runs through everything I'm going to be going through. It just has it all typed out and some great little dotted line graphics and all like that. So anything I do in here should be supported within this document that will be linked right below this video. So with that said, let's dive in. So once you open up Dimensions, this is what you should see, something like this. Now above here, and if you look at my cursor up here in the upper corner, Adobe Dimensions is listed here, and then File, Edit, Object, Image, Camera, View, Window. All of these things you can't see right now. That's just because of the video capture software I'm using right now. It's week one. It does not capture that top bar. I will figure that out for week two, but for right now, I will talk out all of those upward clicks up there. So hopefully that makes sense. So inside of this, we're going to actually just create something new. I'm going to say don't save that other one. I was playing around with it. These are two projects I was playing around with. And this is what opens up. And it looks a little intimidating, but let's see if we can break it down a little. So right now I'm looking at the models. And you're going to have to think about the project that you're doing currently. And you might need to shift it slightly, or you might be able to expand it depending on what models that you want to use. But let's just set it up this way, or at least talk about it in this way. Anything that you were building, I hope, would fit into some of these basic shapes that are in here. We've got some nice boxes. We've got, oh, there's our nice box. We also have a tube pack that we can throw in there. This tube pack is actually, I'm going to use this guy to move this guy over. That tube pack is living right there. There's all sorts of things we can do in here. Simply hit delete and these things go away. I will ask you not to use the beer cans. There were no beer can projects going on previously. We're just not going to do that for these either. They're a little different, and so I'd much rather you stick to these basic kind of objects that we can use. Cute little coffee cup. All right, so that being said, those are our objects that we'll use, and you can play around with this definitely. If you slide down, you can see there are a bunch of them, and some get a little crazy. There's bowls and boxes and all like that. Some specialty boxes that are rounded, probably a little harder to do. But I, in the past, have used a number of these. I've actually used, there's one in here. Yeah, we go food pouch. I use that for a client to show what their coffee would look like. Anyway, you'll see that in a little bit. Let's talk about how this also works as far as like, here's the objects. Let's talk environment. And if we go to images, you can start to see some of the backdrops that we're dealing with. And they get a little wonky down here at the bottom. But if you're up here at the top, I would really suggest using one of these two tabletops. This is one tabletop, and then this is the other tabletop. I'm going to go with this one. I like this one a little bit better. And I'm going to go back to my object, and I'm going to choose, I'm going to go for something super simple. I actually kind of like this tube pack. I know that seems a little funny, but I'm going to throw it right in there. Boom, I've got a tube pack. Now, I can do a lot with this. Each of these circles, the blue, the red, and the green, all do various things. So the green rotates it around that axis. The blue does a little bit more like that. And the red is the x-axis and can bring you back that way. Essentially, you drag your object onto the table, and then you can start to move it around. And you see the grid pattern that's showing you what the actual floor, the virtual floor space feels like. So now that I have an object, and you could have chosen any object, again, I could throw this guy right next to it. Boop. Now I've got a little coffee cup. Now you'll notice that if I'm using my, what is that tool? The pan tool. I'm actually able to grab both objects at once. If I instead use my select tool, I can use these tools, or actually grab these objects individually. I'm actually going to get rid of this coffee cup, and I'll just be focusing in on my tube right here. Now, if I go to the upper right corner of my window over here, you'll see that I have inside of my tube package, which is this, I have two objects. I have the canister and I have the actual lid itself. And apparently you can move that off. I'm not going to do that right now. But if I go to the canister, you'll be able to see I'm selecting the canister, and right below this, there's some actions. Now, all of these actions, delete, are there. You can duplicate and all sorts of things. But this one right here says place graphic on model. Now that's what we're going to be doing for today. Now I created this little label. It's a simple JPEG, created it in Illustrator. I'm going to say open, and boop. You can see that it's actually on my package now, and I can actually move it around in space on my package to see how I really want that thing to sit. I'm going to center that a little bit lower. Now everything I'm doing right now is just simply with this tool right here, which is the selection tool, just moving that label around. So far as tools go, we only use the selection tool, and I've used the pan tool. So once I have that label sitting on there, now depending on what your object is, you may need to adjust your proportions a little. You may need to adjust scale a little. You can see here that I can squish if I wanted to, or I can extend a little, and the same on the sides. I can squishy. And this, if I wanted to, I could rotate, which is a bad idea for this one. So we're just going to leave that as is. All right, so now if I go back up here in the upper right, I can look at my tube package, which is looking pretty decent right now. I can go to my camera, which is the thing that we're looking at, and I can do a couple things here. One of which is I can turn on focus. And I do that by sliding that little thing, and I can set my focus, which means if I wanted to, I could bring my focus in right about here. And yeah, so it knows to focus on that. I can also go back here to my camera, and I can actually adjust some of these, the positions of the cameras, but also the rotation. So if you see in here, if I click out or hover over the X or the Y or the Z, I get this little arrow, and that means if I click and drag, you can see how I can move the object in space. I can do this and rotate it that way if I wanted to. And this is all me adjusting where the camera is. The last thing I can show you is up here in the environment. Because if we're talking about this, we pretty much have the background picture, we have the camera, and then we have the object you're dealing with. So right now I'm clicking on the environment, and right here I have this great button called Match Image. So if I click on that, I can say, okay, resize canvas to fit image aspect ratio. We're going to leave that one alone. I'm going to go under here and say create lights. Now there's a couple things you can do here. You can say outdoor sunlight or multiple lights. I'm going to leave it on multiple lights. And doing that actually shifts the whole package so that it's sitting down on what it sees as the tabletop. It also adjusts a little bit, so you can now see that I have multiple lights, and you start seeing a little bit more shadow. Now I'm going to come back here and I'm going to grab this thing again, and I'm going to push it back in space a little, and there, so I can see the whole thing. That's nice. Now that that's all set up, I don't know, I'm feeling like this is pretty good. Yeah, I got my object here. If I wanted to, I could play around a little bit more with these if I wanted to, and adjust those angles. But for right now, I think, actually, let's go into, do I want this guy? Do I want to rotate you a little? Nah, I'm going to leave you centered. What if I grab this guy and give it, nope. I'm going to pop you back up there. Yeah, I'm going to leave you right about there. I like that. Yeah, let's go with that. All right, so now I have my object, I have my scene, and I have all that set up. Nice. So one more thing. If you wanted to, I mean, I said under here you have these two options that I would suggest. You can also add in images. So if you go up and under, let me find it. There we go. Under import, so under file, import, you can choose image as background. And at that point, if I wanted to, I could just find another image. So if I wanted to, I could use this demo kitchen. Actually, it would be that image right there. So I just did a test a little while back. Here's my kitchen countertop, and I threw a nice little can on it, and you can see the shadow and all like that. I'm not going to do that right now. If I did hit, actually I will do it. Let's do it. Let's say file, import, and I'll say images background. And I'll say, boom, that image. I say open. And you can see those shadows. Look at those. Boop. All of a sudden that's in there. This is a good moment where I can go in here and instead of saying that, I can say outdoor sunlight. And boom. Now it's taking the light from the window, looking at the shadows, and giving me something more of that. I don't love that. I'm instead going to use multiple lights. And you'll see it re-render. Boop. And now I have the double shadows. Yay, yay, yay. I'm not a huge fan of this picture for obvious reasons, so I'm going to go back to the table and just click on that and pop that back in here. Yay. Much nicer. So now with something like that, this has all been done under the Design tab. You'll notice there's Home, Design, and then there's Render. So once I have my object here, once I've wrapped a side of it so that I can actually see the label, I'll hit Render. So what I'm going to do in here is just not actually choose the Photoshop file. I'm actually just going to go for a PNG. I'm going to set that test to here. I have a file open that I'm already doing some tests with. I'm going to name it, and I'm going to call this one Coffee 02. And then at that point, I can hit render. Now there are, I forgot about, there are a couple things here. You can go low quality, which will render fast, medium, which you get medium quality and at medium speed. And then there's a high definition one that goes a little bit slower. I'm going to keep it on the high definition one for a little bit slower. I'm going to click render, and that was the old shot it was rendering. This is the new shot. Let's see it kick along. Okay, there was a little fast forward there, but essentially, here we go. And this is what popped out. So again, you see a little bit higher resolution on the image I'm using. You see much higher resolution on the object I'm using. So what happened there is the object you place is a low-res poly form. Poly as in polygon, as in the parts that make up the overall form. So either way, it's low-res, you place it, you get your labels on it, and then you hit render, and essentially it cooks it. And depending on how you set up your lighting and all like that, it pops out relatively like this. Now, if we look back at what we did, I really didn't do very much inside of here. If we go back to the design itself, here we go. This background image was this stock table image that we used. This was an object from, let me go over here to the objects. That was this right here, and I placed my object on here. Now, for something more like the cube box, you'd have to apply in multiple different ways. Ooh, let's get rid of that for right now. There we go. So hopefully this tutorial was useful for you. Again, this was a very quick run through this. There are more tutorials out there through Adobe. There's also a link to the tutorial guide below, which is a printed article that will run you through essentially the same process I just went through. Between this video and the document below, I'm hoping you have some pretty decent success. You can see in under about 15 minutes, I was able to kick this thing out. I expect it will take longer than 15 minutes for you. I expect that you'll have at least 1 or 2 tries where something's not quite right. If you save out those not quite right moments as a PNG, that's something you could send to me and be like, hey, this is what happened. What do you think the problem is? And I might be able to help. But to be honest, I don't see too much of that going on. My hope is that with these objects and your ability to play around with the camera and the package itself and the actual environment itself as far as lighting goes, this match image button is super, super useful. So with all of those things going on, I'm looking forward to what you guys can produce and what you can show me. So I guess that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. Talk to you soon.